Clear communication works unless trust is low. So for you as a leader, trust isn't soft. No, trust is a hard performance driver. And with this episode, I want to ensure that you're among the trusted high-performing leaders. And to do that, I'm joined by an absolute legend, Stephen M.R. Covey. He's the author of many books, including Speed of Trust, and advisor to many CEOs worldwide. And he will show you how you can build trust in your organization through communication while avoiding the pitfalls in which so many leaders fall. Enjoy. What do leaders get wrong about trust?
Several things. Here's one. They assume that trust is a soft, nice-to-have social virtue, which it is. But what they get wrong is that they don't often recognize that trust is also a hard-edged economic driver.
Wow.
It affects the speed at which we can move and the cost of everything.
Yeah.
Distrust is expensive. High trust is profitable. It's fast. I like to say nothing is as fast as the speed of trust. There's economics to trust. That's one. I'll give you another one. And that's the idea that you either have trust or you don't. It's either there or it's not. And I'll acknowledge that that's your starting point. But in the same way that you can lose trust through your behavior, you can also establish it, grow it, build it, extend it, expand it through your behavior. And in fact, you can get really good at building trust on purpose, intentionally. It can become a great strength and asset for any leader, for any communicator to get good at building trust intentionally on purpose.
So it's really important for the performance of a business and for someone's leadership as well. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I like to say trust is a learnable skill. A competency.
A skill set. Wow. And obviously we want to find out how to learn this skill. Before that, I wonder, you consult with some of the biggest companies in the world, some of the most well-known brands in the world. When you enter the office or speak to the leadership team, do you immediately realize if it's a low trust culture or high trust culture?
Quite quickly, you can kind of sense it in the interactions, in the dialogue, in the communication, the very work that you do. Yeah. And what you see is what I call counterfeit behavior. It's not the flat out lying. See, a behavior that builds trust, a communication behavior that builds trust is to talk straight. You tell the truth. And it's not so much that people lie, although occasionally that happens. It's more that they spin and they twist, they manipulate, they posture, or they tell people what they want to hear, or they tell half-truths, partial truths, or they technically tell the truth, but leave the wrong impression. Yeah. That counterfeit behavior. And so what you see in a low trust culture is a lot of counterfeit behavior where people are spinning instead of talking straight, telling the truth, where people have hidden agendas instead of being open and transparent, where people are blaming and finger pointing at everybody else instead of being accountable, being responsible, looking in the mirror, taking responsibility, where people overpromise and underdeliver versus truly keeping commitments, doing what you say you're going to do, and so forth. And so it shows up in counterfeit behavior and a lot of bad mouthing behind people's back, sweet talking to their face, then bad mouthing behind their back. And that when you see a lot of that behavior happening, you can probably say, you know what? There's probably not a lot of trust in this culture. So it shows up in behavior, counterfeit behavior ways. You can also measure trust, of course, but this is more, I can kind of walk in and, you give me a few hours with a team and I can tell, is there high trust here or is this a lower trust team and culture?
Yeah. It seems that trust manifests itself in two different leadership styles. And what you just described is behavior, but it's expressed in communication, right? The talking behind people's back, not making commitments which you then don't uphold, etc. So would you also agree that it's two different leadership communication styles?
I do think so. I think that it's a different communication style where there's low trust. It tends to be more hierarchical, more top-down, more just directive. If you do this, do that, and more kind of, I'll tell you what you need to know and no more than that. And whereas in a high trust culture, the communication style is far more interactive, more collaborative, more two-way. There's more listening involved. There's more involvement of people. There's more openness, more transparency, more sharing of the why, not just the what. And you see that with, just more genuine authenticity, transparency, even vulnerability that you'll see in more high trust cultures.
You get this great quote in Speed of Trust. In a high trust relationship, you can say the wrong thing and people still get your meaning. In a low trust relationship, you can be very measured, even precise, and they still misinterpret you. That is the sad truth.
Yeah. And my point on that is to say that the foundation for great communication is trust.
Yeah.
And if you're not trusted, and if there's low trust in the relationship, so even if you're, using the right approaches and communicating the right way, but you don't trust each other and the person doesn't trust you, they misinterpret you, they read things into it, they project their agenda onto you. As important as communication skills are, and they are very important, it's your work, but your work also highlights the importance of trust as being the foundation. Yes. And I'm just making the point that I view it as like an iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg is the skills and the techniques. And I don't downplay those, they're important. But the greater mass of the iceberg that's often beneath the surface is the trust and the authenticity and this integrity, this foundation of it. And if that's not there, if there's low trust, then people misinterpret communication all the time. When there's high trust, people will give you the benefit of the doubt. They'll assume positive intent, and they'll stay with you longer and give you a chance to make sure they understand in a way that they won't do when there's low trust.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that iceberg analogy. I agree with that. I think it's as I said, the skill set we see on top and the actual communication that comes out of people's mouths and, the keyboards, but underneath is so much more. Now, interesting, in the beginning, you said that trust is a skill. So how, as leaders, can we build this skill?
We build it through our credibility and our behavior. Credibility and behavior are the building blocks for trust. And on the credibility side, this is who we are. And so that's our character and it's our competence. And both are vital. The character, that's really who we are. Our competence is what we can do. And so the character, who we are, that's our integrity. Are we a person of authenticity? Are we real? Do we tell the truth? This type of thing. But it's also our intent. And that's our motive and our agenda. Are we seeking mutual benefit? In your work, you call this, benevolence, that we're seeking the well-being and the best interest of others. Win-win, mutual benefit. Yeah. I care about others and I want them to succeed. That benevolence, that's intent. So that's part of the character. And then on the competence side, that's both our capabilities, our talents, our skills, our expertise. The key question here is, are we relevant? But it's also our results, our track record of performance. Do we have a track record of delivering, coming through, making things happen, or are there gaps in that? So that combination of character and competence makes a person credible. And you can focus on your credibility. And the more credibility you have as a leader, the more trusted you will be and the more effective you'll be in your communication because you're credible. People trust you. If you're not credible, then the less effective you'll be as a leader and the less trusted you'll be, including in your communication, because they're not quite sure if they believe you without that credibility. So that's credibility. And that's something we can work on and get better at by taking responsibility for it, recognizing its character and competence. Then it's behavior, which is really how we do what we do. It matters. And so I have, in the Speed of Trust book, I have 13 high trust behaviors that if people behave in these ways, they will build trust disproportionately fast and better. If they behave in ways that are opposite of that or counterfeit of that, they'll diminish, destroy trust faster as well. So they're high leverage behaviors and they're simple things. And half of these, Oliver, are communication behaviors, like talk straight.
I noticed that in the book.
Demonstrate respect, clarify expectations, listen first, keep commitments, and so forth. And so you behave your way into trust, you behave your way out of trust. You can do both. And so becoming really kind of aware that how I do what I do matters. And there's behaviors that will help me build trust. And these are straightforward, common sense behaviors. They're common sense. They're not always common practice. So we're just trying to make common practice of these common sense behaviors.
Where do leaders usually fall short in your observation, experience?
Again, I come back to this idea of counterfeit behavior, a behavior that builds trust. Talk straight, tell the truth. But sometimes the truth is hard to tell, or the truth is brutal, or the truth is not popular. People are then, they could move into where they're flat out lying. And that's the opposite of the behavior. You lie and that will destroy trust and it will destroy it fast. But some people lie and they might get away with it for a while, but you can't sustain it. At some point, you'll run out of runway and the lies will catch up with you. So more commonly, they move toward the counterfeit. And that counterfeit behavior is where leaders fall short. And then I could go through each of the 13 behaviors. There's a counterfeit. Demonstrate respect. I show respect to everyone. The opposite, I disrespect people. The counterfeit is when I show respect to some, those who can maybe do something for me, but don't show that same respect for those who maybe can't. And, so I treat people differently based upon who they are and what they can do for me or not. And so forth with all 13 behaviors. It's those counterfeits that tend to trip us up.
Amazing. So as a leader, let's say I hear this and say, okay, Stephen, I hear you. You're right. I could do better. Sometimes I display this behavior. Other times I'm not. What would be one concrete thing how people can put this into action? Because we're talking about changing habits, right? Because these habits are deeply ingrained. So it's not just, there's a switch in my head and now I communicate in an open, transparent, trustworthy way. It's probably trickier than that, right? Where do people start concretely?
They start by going first and modeling the behavior. And especially leaders. And I love how your work focuses on leadership behavior and with founders and speak like a CEO, all these things. But someone needs to go first. Leaders go first. And they go first in behaving in ways that build trust and in communicating in ways that build trust. So if there's spin all around, we have a culture of spin, then be the first to demonstrate high trust behavior of talking straight, telling the truth, being open, even if others are spinning around you. If there's kind of people who are respecter of persons, and be the first to show respect to everyone. If there's a lack of transparency, a lack of openness, if everyone kind of is operating with hidden agendas, or they're operating where they're keeping their cards close to the vest, be the first to lead out and say, hey, you know what? We're going to open up and let me, and be more transparent. Let me tell you what we're trying to do. Let me tell you why we're trying to do it.
Are you sick and tired of spending 8 hours preparing for a 1-hour presentation? You're not alone. That's why I created my tactical guide, 50 presentation hacks. It's for free. Grab it in the show notes.
I often have this sentence in my mind that if you want to be trusted, behave like a trustworthy person. It can be as simple as that, right? We use big words, but we all know what a trustworthy person looks like because we've worked for people, we worked with people, and some we trusted, maybe others we didn't, and we can probably tell why. The reasons you just outlined, the counterfeit behavior, not living up to commitments, etc. So it's not complicated.
It's not.
But it's not easy to do sometimes in organizations where that is ingrained behavior and maybe also personal habit.
I like to say this is simple, but not easy.
Yes.
and it's simple to say, go first. It's not easy, though, when everybody or the entire culture is filled with counterfeit behavior. And maybe your stakeholders around you are used to counterfeit behavior, expect counterfeit behavior. I think of the story of Alan Mulally when he came in as the new CEO of Ford Motor Company. And he came in, and I'll make a long story short, first week on the job, he's got his executive team there, and they put up all the slides for their projects. And they put up either a green, yellow, or red slide representing, green, everything's good. Yellow, there's some caution. Red, we got problems. So he said the first week, 323 slides were put up representing every project in the company. Every slide was green. The next week goes by. Again, over 300 slides go up. Everyone is green. Third week goes by. They had their executive team meeting. Over 300 slides go up. Every slide was green. After 3 straight meetings, Mulally then says, team, this is 3 straight meetings. Every slide has been green. Here's my disconnect. We're going to lose $17 billion this year. Surely not everything is going well. We can't manage a secret. We've got to be open. We've got to be transparent. We've got to help each other. We've got to confront reality. We've got to take issues head on. I'm inviting you to do that. So next week, he's given this invitation. The very first slide out of the gate, Mark Fields, head of North American operations, he puts up a red slide. And Mulally sees it, and he stands up and he claps. And he says, Mark, that's great visibility. Tell us what's happening, and then let's brainstorm how we can help. Now, look, the rest of the meeting, everyone put up the red slides. Everyone put up the green slides because they wanted to make sure that Mark Fields showed up to work the next day. Because in the old culture, maybe, if you tell the truth, you got shot down. You killed the messenger. Well, he showed up, and it was at that point that the culture began to change, and people would put up red and yellow slides along with the greens. See, what was happening there, these were not bad people doing evil things. These were good people caught in a culture of counterfeit behavior, where everyone was spinning, sugarcoating, positioning, posturing, kind of holding things close to the vest, not being open, not being transparent. But it wasn't bad people. There was counterfeit behavior everywhere. And Mulally went first and said, let's get real. Let's talk straight. Let's be transparent. Let's confront reality. We can't manage the secret, but we can help each other. And they went from a $17 million loss to a $17 billion loss to a $12 billion gain in 2 years.
Wow. That's a fantastic story. And it just shows the leadership and then people following strong leadership. It's probably fair to say that we are in the crisis of trust when it comes to leadership. You know the data is probably better than I do, but 2/3 of people mistrust government leaders, business leaders, leaders in the media, etc. Right. And one of the issues we see and talk a lot about at the moment is AI and how it's being introduced into businesses. And that seems to me to lead to, broken trust as well, or at least, distrust, mistrust, because people obviously worry about their job, their safety, their security, and they think that leadership isn't necessarily open with them about plans to introduce AI, because obviously leadership fears that people will resist it and then not help with the implementation. It's a pretty tricky situation, and I'm sure you see this as well. So how should companies work through this issue?
Yeah, it is tricky, and this is not easy. I think the best approach, and as companies work through this, as leaders work through this, be open, be transparent versus clandestine. Don't with a hidden agenda. Hey, we can introduce this AI and replace all these people, but we're not going to tell them. I think it'd be better to do the following: to first of all involve people in it, involve leaders in it, involve divisions in it, departments in it, teams in it, so that they become part of using this, embracing this, and utilizing it. And again, the goal is to not just, quote, replace people, but to really augment and release and unleash human potential. Now, look, there might be some job loss. It's almost like you can't avoid that reality and act like it's not there and just bury your head in the sand, because then people will say, you're not telling the truth. But if you involve people in it so that they are part of helping determine how we're going to use this and how it can optimize and elevate our ability to work, then I think that involvement will lead to greater commitment. And if you're open and transparent about it, including that there likely will be some job loss with this, I'd rather kind of say it and keep the trust than not say it and say the opposite and lose the trust when it happens. Because the whole idea is you want to be trusted so that maybe people don't always like what they hear, but they learn they can trust what they hear from you.
Couldn't agree more. Also, because if you don't follow that approach, people will assume the worst and will essentially sabotage from within by just being very passive about it. And that's why we see these shocking numbers about AI implementation projects that fail because leadership didn't get people on board in the way you just described. So in a way, that is a dead end. And it's a race to the bottom. As Seth Godin said, if you're in a race to the bottom, you may actually win, and then you're stuck at the bottom. So good luck with that.
I actually listened to your episode with Seth. It was fantastic. Yeah. It is a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
If there's no involvement, there's no commitment.
Yes.
The greater the involvement, the greater the commitment, but also the greater the creativity, the innovation, the passion. And you can create something together. So do it with your people, not to your people.
So good. Stephen, I know you have to go. So this is always my final question. What's your best piece of communications advice?
I would say this. Do your very best to try to always declare your intent. Declare your intent in front of your communication. So, that means that you share not only the what you're doing, but especially the why. Always give the why behind the what. I learned this so well from Doug Conant, the former CEO of Campbell Soup Company. And he took him from, bottom 10% in engagement to top 10% of engagement. So a complete turnaround in the culture, a complete turnaround in their financial performance from the bottom quartile to the top quartile. So the culture, the performance turned around. He said the key practice was he would declare his intent up front of any communication with any stakeholder, with his employees, with his partners, with his customers. If you do it up front, if you declare your intent, and by the way, when you're on the other side of the equation, start by assuming positive intent until proven otherwise, you'll find that your communication will be interpreted differently. Because when you don't declare intent, people often ascribe intent to you. And they often do it, as you were saying earlier, Oliver, they ascribe it based upon fear of, in worst case scenarios, I wonder what they're trying to do here. Maybe they're using this AI to replace us. Maybe they read things into it. They project their fears. If you don't, they will ascribe intent to you. And at best, they'll be guessing your intent. My rule, no guessing. Don't have people guessing your intent. Declare it. Be open. Be transparent. So I've just learned in any communication, whether it be with a one-on-one and an employee that you need to give feedback to, declare your intent. So you might come in and say, hey, my intent here is to help you succeed.
So good.
And in the process of doing that, here's what I've learned. When you do this behavior, it's causing people to lose trust. So I would recommend, don't make a commitment to someone unless you're going to keep it. Because when you make a commitment and break it, people lose trust. But having declared my intent up front, my intent is to help you succeed. That I received that communication totally different than if someone were to just come in and say, hey, you got a problem. People don't trust you because you're breaking commitments. I'm wondering, do they have an agenda on me? Do they like me? Do they want me out themselves? But when they come in and they say, my intent is to help you succeed. My intent is to confront reality of what's really going on here. And Doug Conant even goes further. Not only declare your intent, declare yourself. And here's who I am. Here's how I like to lead. Here's how I like to work. I like to build trust. I like to help everyone achieve mutual benefit, win-win. Here's who I am. I'm taking the mystery out of the relationship. Declare your intent. Declare yourself. You do that up front. Communication follows so beautifully.
That is so true. And beautifully said.
And again, communication and trust are like two sides of the same coin. I mean, the foundation of communication is trust. That's why I love your work, and you're a great messenger of your work and an advocate and champion. I really admire you, Oliver, for both what you're doing, but how you're doing it. It's really impressive and very valuable for people. So well done.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So here's one last key insight on trust and how we can build trust better and faster with people. And you highlighted earlier, it's as simple as saying, you want to build trust? Well, be trustworthy. Go first. And that is step one. But here's another reality. You could have two trustworthy people working together and yet have no trust between them, even though they're both trustworthy.
Okay.
If neither person is willing to extend trust to the other, to give it. Oof. And so the idea is this: if we want to, we want to create trust, if trust is the outcome we want, a high trust relationship, a high trust team, a high trust culture, to get that, yes, we need to be trustworthy. We, and especially we as leaders, also need to be trusting, need to be willing to give that trust. And being trusting is the idea that trust is given. See, Oliver, I get asked all the time, Stephen, is trust earned or is trust given? My response, yes, both. It is both earned and given.
Wow.
And it's not enough to just earn it. We also have to give it. Because when you give it, people receive it and they return it. When you withhold trust from people, they tend to withhold it back from you. I've worked with organizations all around the world, and I found this. The number one reason why employees don't trust their leadership in low trust cultures, low trust companies, the biggest reason why employees don't trust their leaders is because the leaders don't trust their employees. And the employees are just reciprocating that distrust right back at them. But when you lead out with trust and extend that trust and tell people that you trust them and why you trust them, they tend to respond to that trust. They tend to rise to the occasion. They tend to perform better. They grow, they develop new capabilities, new competencies. You help increase their capacity, but also they return and reciprocate the trust. They give it back to you. Is there a risk in doing that? Yes, there is. But there's a risk in not doing it. And here's one little story I'll make short to illustrate this. I was in Germany with Daniel Grieder. He's the CEO of Hugo Boss. So I was in Metzingen, Germany. And Hugo Boss, great global fashion retailer, iconic. Well, Daniel Grieder had come in as the new CEO just 2 years prior. And before I met with them, he was big into speed of trust. And he came in from the outside, and he was being brought in because the company at the time was not quite performing as well as they felt like they could. So he comes in, he's brand new. He doesn't know the people, they don't know him. First week on the job, he gets together with his top 100 leaders. And he says to the team, team, we have a choice. And here's our choice. You don't know me, I don't know you. So our choice is this. We can spend the next year getting to know each other, deciding whether or not we can trust each other, you deciding whether you can trust me, and me deciding whether I can trust you. We could do that. But I think if we did that, we would waste a year. And we don't have a year to waste. We've got to move fast. So we could do that, or we could start from day one by choosing to extend trust to each other. So team, let me tell you where I come in on this. I've seen, while I don't know you, I know who you are. I know our hiring process at Hugo Boss. We hire winners. My starting point is this. Team, I want you to know something. I trust you. I trust you. And I'm asking you, trust me back. People responded to that. They rose to the occasion. They performed better. They created a 5-year strategic plan. They called it their Claim 5 strategy. When I met with them, they were 2 years into their 5-year plan, but they were achieving the metrics and the goals of year 4. Wow. They were 2 years ahead of schedule. And Daniel said, Stephen, we are moving at the speed of trust, and nothing is as fast as the speed of trust. Well, guess what? Daniel went first in being both trustworthy, but also and especially in being trusting.
I've never heard this idea so powerfully and clearly articulated, Stephen. Thank you. In order to have a company culture and moving at the speed of trust, we should trust our team so they can trust us, but we have to go first. Beautifully. I love your books. You mentioned Speed of Trust a few times. This is the latest one, Trust and Inspire. Get it. If you're in any leadership position, check it out. It's so good and so important, and it shows you how you move from command and control, or enlightened command and control, to trust and inspire, which most companies are not yet in. So it's super relevant. Where can people find out more about you, your books, your work, Stephen?
Yes. Go to our website, speedoftrust.com. or trustandinspire.com. They're mirrored websites. Speedoftrust.com, trustandinspire.com, and there's videos, resources, tools, things you can learn more about. And the best way, honestly, is get those books, Trust and Inspire, Speed of Trust. You can follow me on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram, at Stephen M.R. Covey. And love you to do that, and love you to get into this work on trust. I think, you highlighted it, Oliver. We're facing a crisis of trust in our world. Yeah. And the danger of a low trust world is it tends to perpetuate itself and lead to more distrust. And everyone feels justified in the process because no one wants to get burned. And so love you to get involved in this movement, this work that I'm doing, that you're doing so well, Oliver, about, high trust communication. And let's help bring about a renaissance of trust that we so desperately need today.
Couldn't agree more. Wonderful. Stephen, I appreciate you so much and all the work you've been doing over so many years. Really, really thank you. And thank you for coming on the show and speaking to us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Oliver. Real honor for me to be on your show.
Thanks for watching. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the Speak Like a CEO channel. It means the world to me, and it helps us keep bringing you world-class insights and guests.